Alright, so Valorant's long-awaited Unreal Engine 5 switch is finally here, and many people actually requested a video where I test the performance in Valorant between Unreal Engine 4 and 5. So here it is. Oh, and by the way, you might never see me again on your YouTube recommended page, so subscribing would be greatly appreciated. But anyways, let's begin. I have two devices I'm going to be running the performance test on. The first device is this lower end laptop with its specs being listed on screen, and this pretty average budget PC that at least has a dedicated GPU. Both should represent what the average Valorant player has as hardware, and I'm not going to be including higher end devices in this test, mainly because Valorant will run fine on them no matter what, but most importantly, I'm way too broke to get my hands on one. I'm going to be running a test in the range, walking around shooting bots. After that, I'm going to go in a custom game on Breeze, which should objectively be the worst performing map since it's large and open and should take up a little more effort to load up. And finally, I'm going to go into a team deathmatch to see how the device performs with many people and abilities in the game. The settings are as follows: 1080p and then the lowest possible with no VSync. I will have no background applications running, and also game mode on Windows will be enabled. Temperatures can sometimes also play into role into the performance of the device, and in my area it is pretty hot at the moment as it is in the middle of the summer, but I am going to put the AC onto consistent 25 degrees to keep the room cool so there isn't any inconsistencies due to temperatures. Now here's me with the laptop walking around in the range and also shooting the bots, and as you can see, the Unreal Engine 5 laptop, which is on the right, gets around the same FPS as the Unreal Engine 4 laptop on the left, except when I'm walking around the range, and I don't know if this is because the laptop heat up or something, but it got slightly less FPS than the Unreal Engine 4 laptop. Now, let's go to the walk on Breeze, and this time, spoiler alert, Unreal Engine 5 actually compared noticeably better than the Unreal Engine 4. I would get around 130 FPS walking around the map with the Unreal Engine 4, while with Unreal Engine 5 I would get 140 and even sometimes it would jump to 150. That is not a very large increase, but it is definitely something and it is better than before. Now here's the team deathmatch test. In the first team deathmatch I played on Unreal Engine 4, I actually performed extremely badly because this laptop has some sort of input lag, which is not Valorant's fault of course, it is just the laptop, but you know, it was very unpleasant to play. Thing is, the FPS was around 70, sometimes would drop to 60, and at the maximum, like highest FPS, it would be around 80, which is playable FPS, like that does not make the game unplayable, but it is kind of unpleasant to play like that. Switching to Unreal Engine 5, that 70 FPS mark is much more consistent, and yes, it still drops to 60 sometimes, and the highest FPS it gets are around 80 to 90, but it was way more consistent, and I feel like that is an upgrade in itself. Now finally, I'm on the PC that gets way better frame rates than the laptop. I'm really happy about that. But now, when the bots are not in sight, I usually get around 300 to 400 FPS, but when the bots are in sight, I usually get around 250, 260, with drops to 230 sometimes. Going to Unreal Engine 5, the performance was exactly the same, and I mean mirrored performance in the range. Like when I shot the bots, again, it was 250, 230 FPS, 270. When I moved off, it jumped to like 300, but you know, it is generally the same. Now, we are going over to the cardio session on Breeze, and the PC would usually get around 470 FPS on this one, with 500 FPS highs and around 400 and maybe 30 FPS lows. That's the FPS range as a whole. Going on to Unreal Engine 5, the FPS generally stays the same, but it sometimes hit the 500 FPS range a bit more often, but still it is generally the same and maybe slightly better, like 5% better. Now onto the team deathmatch. In the spawn, when there's nothing going on really, I get around 300 FPS, but when the game starts I get around 200 because there's a lot of stuff going on the screen. On Unreal Engine 5 it is more or less the same thing with like this 3 to 5% increase. Sometimes in the spawn I would just hit 400 FPS for like a millisecond and then it would go right back to 300 FPS, and I would say in the game my FPS was more stable. It stayed above 200 most of the time, and it would drop below 200 less I'm also happy to say that Valorant now occupies less than half of the space that it took up before. So now it is 24 gigabytes, it was 50 something before, and that is genuinely insane. So there you have it. This was my comparison of the UE4 to UE5 Valorant performance, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. I'm happy that this switch was successful, and so now we can get more Valorant content without being limited to the game engine. But anyways, let me know what you think about this, but I'll see you next time, and goodbye.